A month ago, I moved to a new country where I hardly knew anyone. This made me feel lonely and bored a lot of the time. Even though I wasn't a fan of using Tinder, I decided to give it a try to meet people. I spent a lot of time swiping and chatting briefly with the people I matched with. But I noticed that most of the people I matched with were guys who wanted to meet up right away, which made me a bit uncomfortable. Everything changed when I matched with a 30-year-old woman who quickly said hello and didn't waste time asking for my phone number. Since I was new to Tinder, I thought this was normal, so I gave her my number without thinking too much about it. And that's where I made my first mistake. At the beginning, everything seemed fine. The woman, named Diana, would send me voice messages and we talked a little bit about ourselves, but nothing deep. She seemed really eager to talk, often sending me multiple messages if I didn't reply quickly. I found her persistence a bit odd, but didn't think much of it. After talking for a day, she asked to meet up. Our conversations hadn't been very deep, but I agreed, and we planned a time and place to meet. However, just hours before we were supposed to meet, I got cold feet. I deleted Tinder and sent her a message to apologize. That's when things started to get strange. She replied saying it was okay, but then she sent several messages and quickly deleted them before I could read them. Later, she tried to video call me several times. I didn't answer, telling her I was busy, but she kept calling. She even called me twice at 2 a.m. when I was out and had had too much to drink. At that point, I blocked her. Feeling a bit guilty, but mostly relieved, I thought I had put an end to the weird situation. After all, being a young woman in her 20s and living abroad, safety comes first. But it turned out the situation was far from over. The next morning I received a hello from a number I didn't recognize. The WhatsApp profile picture showed an older man, which confused me even more. I asked who it was and got a reply almost immediately. "Hi, it's Diana. I'm using my dad's phone. Why did you block me? Did I do something to annoy you?" Despite how strange this was, I decided to be honest and explain my feelings. She said it was okay, so I blocked this new number too. But in no time, another message popped up from a different unknown number. This time the message was more direct. "Hi, it's Diana. Why do you keep blocking me? I need to talk to you. Text me." This was no longer amusing. I told her I didn't want to talk anymore, but she insisted, claiming she had to tell me something important about a girl who was harassing her using black magic. I made it clear I wasn't interested, but she doubted my belief in her story. So I blocked her again, for the third time. I'm not sure if this was all some twisted joke, but it definitely made my first Tinder experience a nightmare. I keep wondering if this is a common occurrence because I'm considering giving Tinder another try. This time, I'll be more cautious about sharing my number before getting to know someone better. Here's to hoping things go smoother in the future. And to Diana, please, no more messages or contact. Just stop. I'm usually careful with online dating. I talk a lot before meeting, choose public places for the first meetup, and let my friends know where I'll be, just to be safe. The dates are often fun, sometimes not great, but I've never felt scared. I've even made some good friends through it. Some people I never hear from again, which is fine by me. This one time, I met a guy on POF. We chatted a lot on the app and even talked on the phone for hours. He seemed like a nice guy, so we decided to meet up. He lived about 45 minutes away in a town I wasn't familiar with. We talked about me staying over and planned to get some drinks. I thought about booking a hotel room instead of staying at his place right away. I'm not sure why, but I stopped thinking clearly at some point because I left my car near a park. I had no clue how to get back to it if I needed to, because he took so many turns driving to his place. He even suggested I hide in the back of his van because it's a small town and he didn't want anyone to see me. I should have walked back to my car then. He also took my phone and locked it away to hide its location. Looking back, I should have realized something was wrong. At the time, based on our conversations, I thought maybe it was part of some odd game he thought up. He even made it seem like a game before I left my town. When we got to his house, everything seemed normal. We watched movies, talked, and had dinner. But then he started acting strange, asking weird questions in a way that made me feel stupid, pacing around and smoking a lot. He became very intense. I started feeling uncomfortable and suggested going back to my car to head home, but he didn't take me seriously. He said I could take a cab if I really wanted to leave, but I couldn't afford a cab without knowing exactly where my car was. I got my phone back eventually and messaged a friend to be ready in case I needed to call 911 and she needed to come get me. I figured out how to get to my car from a certain point if she could pick me up. Things calmed down after a while, and I decided to just sleep and deal with getting back to my car in the morning. I did make it home safely. We kept talking after that, through calls and texts, acknowledging the awkwardness of our meetup. He apologized, so we decided to meet again, and it was much better. I felt at ease, and we laughed a lot. It felt good. I even chose to stay over this time, not because I felt stuck. He offered to get my pillow from my bag, and as he did, my makeup bag fell out. He put my makeup bag back where it fell and told me about it. I fell asleep while we were talking. The next morning, he drove me back to my car. We didn't talk much for the rest of the day because I was busy being a bridesmaid and had a lot to do. In the evening, he texted me, and I told him I'd call him back later when I was free, as I was busy at the moment. I didn't hear back from him, so when I was free around 2 a.m., I texted him to see if he was still up and wanted to talk. This wasn't a weird time for us to chat, but this time, he got really upset with me. He started questioning what I wanted from him and accused me of having some sort of plan. I was confused. I reminded him that we had agreed to start as friends and get to know each other better. Then he called me foolish for bringing my makeup bag, saying it was just a trick and calling me messy for saying I'd call him later, even though he knew I was busy. All I could think about was how easy it would be to just walk away from this mess. A week later, I received a voicemail at work demanding that I call back immediately. My office has poor reception, and I didn't even see a missed call notification, just the voicemail. When I checked an hour later to try and find out who it was from, the message had disappeared. I was sure I saved it but couldn't find it. Not even in the deleted messages. I figured it was him because something similar happened before. The message he left was really scary. He said terrible things, accusing me of trying to gather evidence at his place to get people in trouble. He insulted me in ways that were shocking and threatened me. This was the last I heard from him as of Sunday morning. Luckily, he doesn't know much about me, not even where I live. I've never dealt with anything like this before, and I'm not sure what to do. I'm just hoping this doesn't get any worse. Once upon a time, I had a job at a small motel chain in the middle of the country, working the night shift. My schedule was usually from late at night until early in the morning. Being a young woman working these hours, I've seen my fair share of odd events. The most terrifying experience I had there occurred within the first few weeks of my job. One evening, just before my shift began, I was browsing Tinder. I was young, single, and 22 after all. I matched with a guy who was just my type. A bit dark and mysterious, with a love for Ouija boards and tarot cards. We hit it off and chatted for a while, but then I mentioned I had to leave for work, and we said our goodbyes. That night was significant because it was my first time managing the motel alone after my training had ended. I was a bit on edge, but nothing prepared me for when a man I sort of recognized approached the front desk and asked for me by name. Alarm bells went off in my head because something about him just felt off. It turned out he was the guy from Tinder. He figured out I was close by, guessed I might be working at the motel he was staying at, and decided to check. This was a huge red flag for me. For the next 2 hours, I couldn't leave my desk because he wouldn't stop talking to me. He shared stories about his ex, how he got into fights, and made inappropriate comments about me. I had never encountered something like this at work before, and was unsure how to handle it. Eventually, he went to his room around 2 or 3 in the morning, and I took the chance to take a break outside. No sooner had I lit my cigarette than he appeared again. I had looked him up before and knew he was a painter visiting for work. As he talked about his hometown, he kept inching closer to me. Then he asked if he could smoke weed, which I agreed to, hoping it would make him leave me alone. I pointed out a spot away from the cameras, but instead of leaving, he got too close, smelled my neck, and began to touch me inappropriately. Quickly, I pushed him away and sternly warned him not to touch me again. Dropping my cigarette, I reached for my phone to alert my boss, But before I could, the man snatched it from my grasp and sent himself a message. Now he had my number. The first thing he sent was a shocking photo of his altered private part, unlike anything I had ever seen. Following that were unsettling messages and images suggesting what he wanted to do to me, pointing out he knew where I was. At this point, I was terrified and confused about why I hadn't called the police. My boss wasn't responding to my calls, and I was alone, panicking in the back office. Then, I received a video from him. Curiosity got the better of me, and I watched it, only to be horrified by its violent and explicit content. I locked myself in the back room, overwhelmed with fear and tears, until it was time to prepare the morning breakfast for the hotel guests. His messages continued for several days until I finally mustered the courage to inform my boss about the entire ordeal. The man was immediately expelled from the motel and barred from any future stays. The company he was associated with was also banned from making reservations with us. Looking back, I realize I should have called the police right away, but fear held me back. To the terrifying man from Tinder, let's never cross paths again. I'm a 21-year-old girl who likes guys. Back in November 2016, I had a tough time because I broke up with my boyfriend. It took me a whole year, but by October 2017, I felt ready to start dating again. So I did something a bit silly and signed up for Tinder again. I had used Tinder before, but nothing too weird had happened until this one time at the end of October when I matched with a guy named Dave. Dave seemed nice at first glance. He was funny and polite. We chatted for a couple of weeks and decided to go out on a date. We agreed to meet in the city he had just moved to, which was about a 35-minute drive from where I lived. I arrived at the bar first and waited for him. He was 15 minutes late, but when he showed up, he looked pretty much like his pictures, which made me relieved. However, the moment he started talking, I noticed something off about his voice. It sounded like he was about to cry at any moment. It was odd. Dave had a few tattoos, one of which was the all-seeing eye, often linked to the Illuminati. Trying to lighten the mood, I made a joke about the Illuminati and asked him to share his secrets. He didn't find it funny and snapped at me, asking why I would say something like that in public. I tried to laugh it off, but he continued to act strangely. He even mentioned something bizarre about people dying, which left me speechless. About 20 minutes later, I had convinced a couple of my friends to join us at the bar. After my friends arrived, I moved to sit closer to Dave so we could all fit around the table. As soon as I sat down next to him, he put his hand on my knee and squeezed really hard. It wasn't a gentle touch, it was uncomfortable. I told him to back off, and then he leaned in close and said something super weird about liking my kneecaps. Seriously, who says that? By the time my friends decided to leave, Dave had downed 7 beers, and mind you, it was just a regular Tuesday night. When I went to pay for my drinks, Dave stood weirdly close behind me, and I noticed he was way too excited, if you get what I mean. I quickly signed off my bill and moved away from him. Just as I was about to say goodbye, it started to pour rain outside. Dave then told me he had walked to the bar and asked if I could give him a lift home. I didn't want to, but I ended up saying yes. During the short drive to his place, he mentioned it wasn't really his house, but his sister's basement where he was staying. When we got there, he tried to kiss me. I turned my head to avoid it, but he grabbed my face and went for a full-on kiss, which I did not want at all. I pushed him away, but he tried again. I had to forcefully tell him to leave my car. Then, out of nowhere, he declared his love for me, saying he fell for me the moment he saw my Tinder pictures, and insisted I come in to meet his sister and her husband. I was firm and told him I'd call the cops if he didn't exit the car. He started crying but finally left. And that's the story of one of my weirdest Tinder dates ever. What a strange guy. I matched with a girl on Tinder named Jenna. Jenna and I had our first date on January 26th. She knew that I had recently ended a long-term relationship and that I still talked to my ex Mary from time to time. By mid-February, Jenna and I began referring to each other as boyfriend and girlfriend. 3 days ago, while I was taking a shower, Jenna went through my phone. She read some old texts between Mary and me. There were some normal chats and some very loving ones from before Jenna and I had started dating or even met. When I finished my shower, I found Jenna packing her stuff and almost out the door, with my phone in her hand. She had sent messages to many people saying things like, "I'm apparently an awful person and Mary is a manipulative person." Jenna then got into my Facebook account. She posted messages calling Mary all sorts of bad names and then removed several of my friends from my list. She did the same thing with my Twitter account. I managed to borrow a coworker's phone to try and reach out to her and to log back into my Facebook. When Jenna found out, she changed the passwords for my accounts and even my email. Later, she told me she wanted to sort things out and suggested meeting at my place. I agreed, hoping to get my phone and passwords back. She returned my phone and insisted I call Mary to cut her off. I had already warned Mary that something like this might happen and asked her to just go along with it. Thanks to our acting skills, we had a very believable fight over the speakerphone for Jenna to hear. After getting my passwords back, I changed them immediately. I told Jenna it was best for her to leave, but she couldn't grasp why I was pushing her out of my life. Jenna went home really upset after our breakup. She began posting and commenting on my Facebook, so I blocked her. I blocked her on everything, but she kept calling me. When I answered, she wouldn't say anything, so I blocked her number too. Then, I started getting repeated calls from a number in Colorado. I eventually went to my phone company and changed my number. I also changed my door locks, just in case she had taken a key. The next day, Jenna made a new Facebook page. She called me terrible names and Mary too. She even got into my other Twitter account. I warned her that if she contacted me again or posted about anyone I knew, I'd call the police. Soon after, I got an email about a credit card approval from a bank I don't use. I called the bank and explained the situation. They froze the account. Many of my friends suggested calling the police, and I finally agreed. When the police arrived, they told me Jenna had a record with them, and her real name wasn't even Jenna. It was something else. They gave her a warning for harassing me and said if she tried to contact me again, she'd be arrested. On Monday, I had to call the fraud department to freeze all my accounts and start an investigation. This story might seem short, but it's actually the simplified version of what happened. I'm sharing this because now that the police are involved, and I've had to change my locks and number, I'm beginning to feel the emotional impact of being mistreated and harassed by someone I was beginning to care for. I'm struggling with how to handle these feelings. I really wish none of this had ever happened. I'm a 22-year-old guy who likes other guys, and I've got a bunch of health issues in my head that make life pretty hard. One of the big ones is BPD, or borderline personality disorder. This means I often feel really paranoid, don't think too highly of myself, and even though I really want people to be close to me, I find it hard to trust anyone. Since I turned 18, I've been using Grindr and lots of other apps for dating. I've met quite a few people through them, so many that I can't even remember all their names. I hope you won't think badly of me for this. This weird story starts around the end of November or the beginning of December last year, and it's been a part of my daily life ever since. One day I got a message on Grindr from someone who didn't have a profile picture or any info about themselves. The message was creepy. It said, "I know who you are," and had a photo of me that looked like it was taken from my old Facebook page. My Grindr profile doesn't show my face because I don't want people I know, like my family and friends, to find me on there. I had no clue what to do, so I didn't reply. Nothing happened for a day, and I thought maybe it was just someone messing around. But then I got another message, "Why are you ignoring me?" it said. This time, I replied, because I was starting to feel a bit scared. I tried to act tough, like, "So what if you know me?" And then I blocked them, partly because it was just too weird, and partly because I was really freaked out. For a few days after that, nothing happened, and I started to feel a bit better. But then, while I was at a friend's place, I got another message. This time it was a text from an unknown number saying, "Hey you, why did you block me?" Now I was really worried. I kept thinking about who this could be, how they knew it was me from my Grindr profile, and how they got my phone number. I didn't tell my friend what was going on. I just tried to act normal, But he could tell something was up because he kept asking if I was okay and noticed I wasn't looking too good. After that, I kept getting messages from different Grindr profiles, all saying things like, "I know who you are, don't ignore me, I'll keep coming back." With Christmas coming up, I couldn't handle it anymore. So, I deleted my Grindr account, made a new Snapchat, and changed my phone number. I just wanted to have a good time with my family without feeling scared and suspicious of everyone around me. Over Christmas Eve and the days leading to the New Year, everything was quiet. I thought maybe the person bothering me had lost interest, which was a relief. But then, in early January, it all started again. This time, the messages were on my phone, which was even scarier because I had changed my number, and the number they were coming from seemed different from before. The messages got scarier because they showed that whoever was sending them knew where I was and what I was doing. Like, if I went out to buy stuff, I'd come back, check my phone, and there'd be a message saying they saw me at Harley's shopping center, or commenting on my clothes like, "I like your jeans." The messages weren't coming every day anymore, just 2 or 3 times a week, but they felt more threatening. It was like the person was trying to show they could reach me no matter where I was. So that's where things stand now. I keep getting these creepy messages, sometimes from different phone numbers. I've tried looking up the numbers on Facebook and Google, but I found nothing. It makes me wonder if they're using some app to hide their real number. I keep thinking, could this be someone I met before? A friend playing a mean joke? Or someone I don't even know who for some reason knows me? I've been told to go to the police, but that's not something I'm comfortable doing. I'm not exactly helpless. I'm 6 feet tall, weigh around 180 pounds, and have 8 years of training in martial arts and boxing. But all that doesn't really help when you have no idea who's after you, why they're doing it, or where they might strike next. It leaves you feeling defenseless and exposed, especially when this person seems to always know your moves. It's really disturbing. I'm at a loss about what to do next. Starting off, I'm a transgender woman. I'm currently not in a relationship, and I'm very open about being trans on all my dating profiles, except for one site called Plenty of Fish. They have a rule against discussing anything related to sex, which they think includes being trans. So I just mentioned that I strongly support transgender rights instead. I got a message from a man who lives about an hour away from me. He was sort of attractive in a way that also made me feel uneasy. There was something about him that didn't sit right with me, but I figured looks aren't everything, so I decided to see where things would go. I found out he smokes cigarettes, but he mentioned he's trying to quit. He said he mostly smokes when he's feeling really stressed or upset. We ended up having a nice chat, and eventually, he asked for my phone number. I gave it to him, mentioning that I was about to get ready for my night classes, so I might not reply quickly. Not long after, I received a text from him, saying it was him from Plenty of Fish. Normally, I would immediately let someone know that I'm a transgender woman, since my dating profile might not make it very clear. I believe in being upfront because I know not everyone is okay with that, and I totally get it if they're not interested. Typically, about 20% of the guys react negatively and end up being blocked. The rest are either immediately inappropriate, sending rude messages or pictures, or they're cool with it or just don't respond. However, this time, I was busy getting ready for class and hadn't sent my usual message yet. Just as I was about to send him my usual text explaining that I'm transgender, I received another message from him. "Who is this person and why are they paying for your phone?" Confused, I asked him how he came across that name. He demanded, "Just tell me, who is he?" I was shocked and realized he must have paid for my personal information from one of those dodgy websites. I replied, "To satisfy your curiosity, I'm transgender and that was my name before. I was about to tell you, but you decided to invade my privacy instead. Please just forget my number. What you did is really crossing a line, and I don't want anything to do with you now." He then threatened to visit me, asking if I still lived at my old address, and insisting we talk face to face. I quickly told him, "No, I've moved, and I'm busy heading out. You need to stop this. Do not contact me again." He wasn't deterred, and said he'd run a complete background check on me because he felt I had lied to him. I warned him, "I'm going to share screenshots of this chat, your profile on Plenty of Fish, and all your photos with my 2 best friends who work in law enforcement in your area, and with my ex-boyfriend who's also in the sheriff's office. I'm serious. Don't message me again." After that, I didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks. I made sure to keep my home secure, locking all doors and windows. My friends and ex made it a point to check on me now and then. Over time, this whole incident turned into one of those strange stories that you can't help but laugh about, though it still makes you feel a bit uneasy. Then one day, I was pretty sure I saw him at the grocery store near my place. He had dark hair, wore thick glasses, and just gave off a creepy vibe, watching me as I picked out my groceries. I texted my ex about the encounter. Surprisingly, this rekindled something between us and we started seeing each other again casually. He even stayed over a few times each month. However, one evening when I was by myself, I felt really uneasy and kept smelling cigarette smoke. I lived in a small apartment building with 3 units. We didn't share air systems, but sometimes smells would drift from one apartment to another. I don't smoke, and because of my asthma, I'm really sensitive to the smell of smoke. The apartment had a standalone air conditioning unit, and I thought it might be pulling in air from a neighbor's place, maybe a visitor who was smoking a lot. So, I turned it off. I had a sign language, ASL video assignment due the next day, so I stayed up all night working on it, signing the same story repeatedly until it felt more like a dance. My cat was acting really strange during my recording, making me start over a few times. By 7 a.m., I finally finished the video, submitted it, and went to bed after making sure everything was locked up tight. After school the next day, where I found out I got an A on my video, I stopped for some groceries. When I got home, I noticed something odd that I had missed in my rush earlier. Each apartment had a tiny garden by the porch. Mine was just gravel and some stepping stones the previous tenant had laid down. Neat and tidy except for a pile of cigarette butts dumped right in front of my bedroom window. It looked like someone had emptied their car's ashtray there. At first, I didn't think much of it and just started to clean it up. While I was sweeping, my elderly neighbor came out and asked if my boyfriend had managed to contact me. He mentioned seeing a young man hanging around my front porch for a few hours the previous night, thinking he might be my boyfriend since he'd seen him around before. The description matched the guy from the grocery store. Dark hair, thick glasses, always smoking. I immediately contacted my on and off ex, and the police got involved, taking statements and screenshots of our conversations. Not long after, I moved out of state for reasons unrelated to this incident and legally changed my name, making sure the records were sealed. I've stopped giving out my phone number directly, advising others to use a messaging app until they really know someone. It's shocking how easily and cheaply someone can dig up your personal information just from your phone number. Stay safe out there. A few years back, after ending a relationship, I found myself with a bit of free time and a desire to meet new folks. I wasn't really looking for anything serious. I just wanted to get out there and maybe go on a few dates. That's when I met JB. He seemed friendly, and we decided to meet up in a nearby city. Our first date went well, and after saying our goodbyes, we planned a few more outings. Eventually, these plans led me to his apartment, located in a part of the city I was familiar with from my student days. This familiarity gave me a sense of security, especially knowing he had roommates who would be around, so I wouldn't be completely alone with him. We spent some time downstairs watching TV, and when his roommates returned and started cooking their dinner, JB suggested we finish the episode upstairs before I had to leave to catch my bus. His room was tiny, with just a single bed and nowhere else to sit. He lay down on the bed, and I perched awkwardly at the edge. He urged me to move closer, and I reluctantly complied. Then he mentioned he couldn't see well and suggested I lie down too. Despite feeling uncomfortable, I figured nothing would happen since we hadn't even kissed. But at that moment, I wished I had just left. Suddenly, without any warning or even a hint of affection, JB grabbed my arm and tried to force my hand down his shorts. That was my breaking point. Thankfully, I had my handbag with me, which I clutched tightly. In a swift motion, I jumped off the bed, slung my bag over my shoulder, and dashed downstairs, with him trailing behind, apologizing profusely and begging me not to leave. He was barefoot and unaware that I knew the city well. I quickly lost him and took a different route than the one we had arrived by. I was panicking at the bus stop, frantically calling for a ride home, hoping he wouldn't find me. Eventually, I made it home safely and never saw him again. However, that wasn't the last I heard from JB. After that night, he went silent for a while. But then he started sending me messages, pleading for another chance to meet up. I ignored all his attempts to reach out. After JB stopped messaging me for a while, I got curious and checked his Facebook. Turns out he had quickly moved in with a new girlfriend shortly after our awkward encounter. It all happened so fast, it made me wonder if he was already with her when we met. But I guess I'll never know for sure. Fast forward 6 months, I hadn't been active on dating sites, trying to avoid any more weird situations. Then, out of the blue in January, JB messages me. He mentioned he had broken up with his girlfriend and wanted to meet for a coffee and chat. Feeling a bit lonely, I entertained the idea but insisted we meet in a public place. He agreed to that. We planned to meet one evening after I finished work, but then he messaged saying he couldn't make it and suggested I come over to his place instead. I wasn't about to do that, so I went home. For the next 6 months, he kept trying to make plans, always trying to guilt me into agreeing, then changing the plans at the last minute, leading me to cancel. It seemed like a small thing until around June, when I was texting a friend from the next town over. Let's call this friend M. M had shared stories about a crazy ex-girlfriend he had. M's name was common but spelled in a unique way. One night, while relaxing at home, I received a WhatsApp message from an unknown number mentioning M by his uniquely spelled name. I was alarmed and quickly informed M, suspecting his ex might be trying to scare me. I can't recall the exact words of the message, but it was threatening enough to make me ask who it was. The reply was cryptic, suggesting M would know who it was. M was just as alarmed, and then I started receiving calls from this number, with the caller hanging up every time I answered. My anxiety spiked, and by the next day, I was a mess. The random calls continued even at work. Eventually, I confided in my cousin about everything, and she decided to call the number. To our shock, it was JB's voicemail that greeted her. She left him a stern warning to stop contacting me, threatening to involve the police if he didn't. Later on, I saw on his Facebook that he was planning to move back to his home country. Hopefully that meant I'd never have to encounter him again. While it might not have been the most terrifying situation, it really unsettled me and played on my mind for a long time. A bit ago, I figured it was time to start meeting new folks again. I wasn't exactly on the hunt for a boyfriend or anything, but trying to find someone in bars just wasn't cutting it for me. Like many single girls in college, I ended up getting a dating app. I ended up chatting with quite a few people on there, and it helped me build up the courage to actually go out on a date from time to time. I didn't actually meet most of these guys in real life, but there were a handful I did meet. For the most part, these dates didn't really lead anywhere, but there was one guy who turned out to be a bigger headache than the others. His name was Alex, and we planned to go out for dinner. He mentioned this fancy place halfway between where we both lived and wanted to take me there. However, when the day arrived, he ghosted me and didn't pick up his phone. He reached out the next day, claiming he was held up at work and had left his phone at home. Sounded like a bunch of excuses to me, but he wanted to try for another day, and for some reason, I agreed. When the day for our rescheduled date arrived, he suggested I come to his place first, and from there, he'd drive us to the restaurant where he had made reservations. He kept telling me to come hungry and not to eat anything before our date, hinting at the big portions served at the restaurant. Meeting up at someone's house or getting into their car isn't something I'm comfortable with on a first date, but after chatting for over a week, I thought, why not? But then, he asked me to park in a lot down the street from his place, which I found odd. Maybe he had a small driveway. But the thing is, I never told him what my car looked like. Yet, as I pulled into the lot, he was right behind me, texting me he was parked just a couple of spaces away. That was the first red flag for me. Ignoring my gut feeling, I got into his car and we set off. I wasn't exactly sure where we were since I'm not too familiar with the area. I knew the name of the restaurant and that it was supposed to be a short drive away on a main road. However, after about 25 minutes of driving on some dark, secluded road, I started to wonder. I finally asked him, "Where are we going exactly?" He then admitted he hadn't been completely honest. When he called the restaurant for reservations, he He was told they had moved and was given a rough idea of the new location instead of an exact address. My heart sank when I realized we had passed the intersection he mentioned about 5 minutes ago, and I noticed he wasn't even using his GPS for directions, even though it was on. That was the second red flag. So I decided to open up my own GPS on my phone, feeling a bit uneasy about the whole situation. I was trying to look up the restaurant myself, which was already a bad sign. That was the third red flag right there. At this point, I realized I might not have made the best decision sticking around, but I chose to stay anyway. We spent some time chatting and getting to know each other, despite the odd vibe he gave off. When he admitted he couldn't find the restaurant, he shrugged it off, saying he knew another spot and drove us even deeper into the night, eventually stopping by a trail leading into the woods. He mentioned we were going stargazing. The place he took me to was actually quite nice, but as we walked through the woods, he kept making jokes about not being a murderer, which wasn't very reassuring. He also made me promise not to run off with his car. That was red flag number 4. The more we talked, the more I noticed he had a habit of lying. He'd tell these elaborate stories, only to reveal he was just joking. At first, it was kind of amusing, like when he claimed to have drunkenly gotten a piercing in a rather sensitive area. But as the night went on, it became clear he wasn't serious about anything he said. I realized I didn't know anything real about him at all. That brought me to red flag number 5. Later, he mentioned going back to his place to watch a movie, but halfway there, he changed his mind and stopped the car at a park. He suggested we hang out there instead, and started daring me to do inappropriate things, asking me personal questions that were none of his business. Then, out of nowhere, he wanted to know if I was planning to kiss him by the end of the night, saying he needed to apply chapstick first. And there I was, rummaging through my purse for chapstick, while he made it awkwardly obvious that he was touching himself. All of this just didn't sit right with me. I let him know straight up that I didn't have any chapstick. But then he tried another move, suggesting I should come closer in a way that was anything but respectful. I made it clear that I wasn't okay with what he was suggesting. Despite that, he tried to pull me closer by grabbing me, which made me even more uncomfortable. I reiterated that I wasn't interested in getting intimate with him, especially not on a first date. Yet he didn't seem to take my refusal seriously and suggested something even more inappropriate, as if it was some kind of compromise. That was the absolute last straw for me. Alarm bells were ringing loud in my head by then. I was really upset, especially considering he had previously told me how much he disapproved of men who pressured women, claiming to be someone who respected boundaries. His behavior at the stargazing spot, where he had been careful not to sit too close, now felt like a complete act. It was as if he had suddenly become a completely different person. I told him off, saying that pressuring me wasn't going to change my mind, and reminded him of his earlier claims of being a respectful guy. He then made a ridiculous excuse, suggesting I was just intimidated, which was absurd. I stood my ground, refusing his advances, which seemed to frustrate him. I was desperately trying to think of a way to get him to take me back to my car when he suddenly pretended to receive an urgent text from his uncle, claiming he needed to go home immediately. At that point, I was completely over the situation. I disliked dishonesty intensely. If he wasn't enjoying our time together, he could have simply said so. Instead, he chose to lie and act in a way that contradicted everything he had said about himself. It just made no sense. To top it off, when he dropped me off at my car in a dark parking lot late at night, he left before I even got out of the car, showing a complete lack of concern for my safety. It was clear there wouldn't be another date. But here's the thing that really got to me later on. I drove past the original location of the restaurant we were supposed to go to, and it was still there, unchanged, open as usual, and very close to his house. So, it made me wonder, where was he really planning to take me that night? The whole experience with Alex from Bumble left me feeling very uneasy. In 2015, when I was around 20, I used to use Tinder quite a bit. There were times when dates didn't go well, or I'd end up waiting for someone who never showed up. One weekend, I went to see some college buddies in Bloomington to relax and have fun. I thought it might be a good chance to meet a girl and spend some time together. I can't really recall her name, but we matched on Tinder and chatted for a day before deciding to meet at her place that night. I told my friends I was heading out since her apartment was just a 5-minute drive from where they lived. I hopped in my car, set up my GPS, and soon arrived at her apartment complex, texting her to ask which unit was hers. I wandered around the complex, trying to find the correct building number until I reached where she was supposed to live. I messaged her to come down and let me in, confident I was at the right spot. She replied with a sure, and I waited outside, probably for about 5 minutes. It's important to note that it was around 10 p.m. in the middle of winter. As I lifted my head from my phone, I started to notice something odd. I saw a window on the ground floor open slightly, and it looked like 4 people were peeking out at me. I messaged the girl again, asking where she was. She replied that the main door to her building was unlocked, and her apartment was the first one on the right after you enter. Heading to the door, I found it odd but true that it was unlocked. Once inside and the main door closed behind me, I turned left, but then I heard a whisper from behind a door saying, "Shh, he's outside." That moment, I realized I was standing near the same window where I'd seen those people looking at me. A strong feeling told me I needed to get out of there quickly, fearing something bad might happen. I left the building, noticed the lights by the window were now off, and ran back to my car, driving away as fast as I could. Back at my friend's place, I shared what happened, but they didn't seem to understand the seriousness of it. As the evening went on, we relaxed and had some beers. Before going to sleep, I received a text saying, "Where did you go? I've been waiting for you all night." I immediately blocked the number and tried to forget about the night by going to bed. So, a word of advice to anyone using dating sites: always choose to meet up in a public place. This whole thing started back when I was 19. I'm not exactly a head-turner, so dating was always a bit of a struggle for me, leading me to try my luck on Tinder. For the first few months, I didn't really hit it off with anyone, until this blonde lady named Katie sent me a message. She was pretty, so much so that I initially thought she must be a fake account. It took another message from her 3 days later to make me reconsider, since fake accounts typically don't bother to follow up. Curious, I decided to respond and took a closer look at her profile, which seemed normal enough to convince me she wasn't a bot. We spent about a month chatting before she suggested I should come visit her. The idea was daunting since she lived a good 8 hours drive away, but I found myself really liking her and had been toying with the idea of visiting her myself. After a bit of persuasion on her part, I agreed to make the trip. By then, I had no reason to doubt her identity. We had been video chatting bi-weekly and calling each other almost every day. I figured I was just incredibly lucky. However, things started to feel a bit off as I was on my way to meet her. She messaged me repeatedly, checking on my whereabouts and ensuring I was still on my way. If I took longer than half an hour to reply, she'd send a bunch of texts that seemed annoyed. I brushed it off, thinking she was just anxious about our meeting, and I was pretty anxious too, so it seemed understandable. Finding her house was a challenge. The directions she gave me led me down a confusing path of gravel and dirt roads, surrounded by thick woods. It was still broad daylight when I finally saw the house. It looked old, with one of the upstairs windows boarded up, but it didn't seem deserted, just dilapidated. Katie's bright red car, the one she'd often mentioned in our chats, was parked out front as I arrived. I messaged her to let her know I had made it, and she replied with a simple smiley face. Stepping out of my car, I felt eyes on me from a window on the second floor. It was unsettling, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe her dad was checking me out. She had mentioned that her dad sometimes visited, so I didn't think much of it and knocked on the door. Katie greeted me with a smile and an unexpected kiss, then led me inside. We settled on the couch, and as we chatted about her plans for our visit, I casually brought up her dad's presence. "I didn't know your dad was here." "Was that supposed to be a surprise?" I asked. Katie looked genuinely confused and told me her dad wasn't there. Thinking she was playing a joke, I mentioned seeing him at the window. Her reaction was immediate fear. She insisted we needed to leave immediately. We rushed to our cars, and as I pressed her for answers, Katie explained she had been alone until I arrived. I called the police, and while explaining the situation, Katie gasped and pointed to the window where I'd seen the figure before. Now I could see him clearly. An older, emaciated man staring back at us. He disappeared from the window after noticing our attention. The police arrived after a tense half hour, during which Katie was visibly upset, regretting not locking her doors. After the police arrived, they split up. Some questioned us while others searched the house. They found the back door wide open but no sign of the intruder, concluding he must have fled into the woods. Katie, too scared to stay alone, asked me to spend the night. I agreed, sleeping on the couch downstairs, near the room where we saw the stranger. Katie, seeking some form of protection, brought out her dad's shotgun, a weapon she'd never intended to use. I assured Katie it was okay, believing the intruder had left, but she felt more secure having the shotgun nearby. I was grateful for her insistence later on. That night, while Katie had managed to doze off, I was still up, glued to the TV. Suddenly I caught the sound of a doorknob turning from the kitchen. My fear had evaporated, replaced by annoyance. I turned on the kitchen light, aimed the shotgun at the door, and there he was, the same man from before, right behind the glass door, looking as surprised as us to find the door locked. After a moment, he turned and disappeared into the woods. I immediately woke Katie, explained what happened, and we called the police again. They arrived and combed through the woods but found no one. They suggested we find a safer place to spend the rest of the night. Katie decided to stay with a friend, and I planned to head home. I left shortly after Katie. While sharing the night's events with my brother over the phone, my car's headlights illuminated the figure of that same man, lurking at the corner of the house, silently observing me. I didn't hesitate. I sped away and chose not to call the police again. However, I did message Katie to inform her, and she said she would contact the police. It seemed like Katie never dared to return to that house by herself after that night. And honestly, I couldn't blame her one bit. That encounter remains one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. In 2011, a few months after ending a very difficult relationship, my friends convinced me to start dating again. To give it a try, I created a profile on a dating site called Plenty of Fish. I was overwhelmed by the number of messages I got in just a few hours. Most messages were simple greetings, or people looking for a quick meetup, which wasn't what I wanted, so I ignored those. About a week later, I got a message from a guy who lived about an hour away. He seemed nice and was good-looking, so I responded. Our chat was light and easy at first. He suggested meeting for coffee, and without thinking too much about it, I agreed. But then things started to get strange. He became very insistent about when we could meet for coffee. I explained that I didn't have a car and might need to borrow my mom's. He offered to pick me up, but that made me uncomfortable. His next message was chilling. He said, "Your town can't be that big. I bet if I knocked on a few doors, someone would tell me where you live." I was shocked and responded, "Are you serious? That's really creepy." This angered him, and he sent several messages after that, threatening me. He said things like, "I could make you disappear and nobody would look for you. You're just a slut. I could throw you in a well and you'd never be found." Terrified, I begged him to leave me alone. He replied with a message saying he knew where I lived and that it wouldn't be hard to find me in such a small town. That was the last straw for me. I blocked him, reported his profile to the dating site, and deleted my account. For weeks after, I was anxious and scared he might actually come to find me. This experience with a threatening guy on Plenty of Fish was one of the most frightening moments of my life. Please, for your own safety, be cautious online.